Hello everyone, welcome on in. It is a new week, it is the penultimate week of the WTA Tour, and it's a busy week. We have three tournaments this week, not the best of tournaments, but three tournaments nevertheless. Looking ahead to this week's tournaments in Hong Kong, China, and in Mexico is our WTA handicapper, and a man who is just on the back of a 3-unit winner. It is Rory Jiwani. Good evening to you, Rory.
Good evening, Nigel. Yeah, it's good to get a winner. I've got to say though, I mean, Qinwen Zheng, she was plus 130 in Tokyo, and you know what, obviously we've done this for a couple of years now, and backing short price favourites isn't really my thing, but she won it as we expected her to. I was really disappointed with Katie Bolter. She got to the semis, panned out pretty much exactly as I'd hoped. And then who could have foreseen Sophia Kenin returning to form in the way she did? I mean, Bolter had her chances in the semi-final. Midway through the second set, she had 4 break points, but Kenin saved them all, and then the American got the break in the next game. So it's funny because, yeah, I picked Zheng, but I feel, I feel like Bolter was a better pick.
Yeah.
Because she was $16. Anyone can pick a winner at plus 130, and Zheng was pretty obvious there. But Bolter was really close to landing the each way. As far as Guangzhou goes, I mean, we dodged a bullet there. I mean, my pick would have been Rebecca Shramkova after her win in Thailand, and she had a good run in Beijing, but she fell at the first. We did mention Olga Danilovic. She was on the shortlist. I've been a bit puzzled by her in the last year or so. You might remember she gave Ons Jabeur a fright at Roland Garros last year. Before that, she'd won a W100 on clay in Madrid. But this season, she reached the last 16 in Roland Garros, hasn't done very much since. And just before Guangzhou, she won I think it was W100. She did win that, and she carried it through, and that's her second WTA Tour win. Her first was 6 years ago. So, she's a talented player. I can't believe she hasn't won more than that. And I was going to say, she was due to be playing in one of the tournaments this week, but she has pulled out after her win. But good to see her find some form, because she's a talented player.
Yep, talented player. We had the winner. The good thing about the winner, though, was that you staked it, right? You had a 3-unit play on it, and it won at plus 130. So we did go triple the usual size, but unlucky. Bolter would have been the dream final. We would have got 8 to 1 about to get in the final, and we've had a nice bit of money to play with going into the final couple of weeks of the season. But nevertheless, we'll come on to the figures at the end of the show, but we are now in profit for the year on the WTA show, which is what it's all about. I wouldn't go too mad, though, this week. I think, these tournaments here, I think we've got a little bit of profit, and I think my strategy would be, to protect it, because it's not really the best of offerings this week, is it, Rory?
No, to put it mildly. I mean, we've got 3 250s, which at the end of the year is just overkill. I mean, Hong Kong isn't bad. The other two, the one in China, in Jiujiang, looks like a challenger event. The one in Merida in Mexico is probably worse than that. But we'll look at Hong Kong in a bit of detail, and we'll look at the other two. And I do have a couple of picks, but yeah, not a week to go crazy by any stretch.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it last week. Motivation for these players at the end of what has been an extremely long season. Some of the players are really up for the challenge. Young players who are hungry to make a statement on the tour. A lot of players who play a lot of tennis might want to just get to the end. You get on a holiday, get Christmas over the way. They've only got a 2-month window before they're back at it again. So it's a really, really difficult time to have a bet. So these tournaments aren't the best. Head across to the Bet Rivers website now. You'll have the outright markets, the tournament markets, and the match bets markets. And if you obviously do have a bet on the first round of these matches, you'll be able to live stream them from the comfort of your own home. Bet live and watch live with Bet Rivers. You'll probably, if you're watching it, 10 of you watching it, you'll double the attendance outside the court and then on the court in some of these. Let's have a start with the Hong Kong one. The Hong Kong one is the best tournament, though, isn't it? This is the best one by far. Yeah. They're all 250s, but this is the best one with some household names or some players that we are aware of. in the other tournaments. I don't even know the number one seed. So let's have a look at that. This tournament, it's a 250 event here. Last time it was played was last year. Leyla Fernandez won the event in 2023. Prior to that, it wasn't played in 2018. Astromenska, the Ukrainian girl, won that tournament. And then we go back to some players that aren't really participating in this week, and people aren't any relevance to them whatsoever. But before we look at the draw, before we break down the draw and have a look at the odds with Bet Rivers. What are the conditions like here, Rory, from last year? For Leyla Fernandez, won it at the end of the year, the Canadian. She did well. She's headed up there at the top of the end of the betting again in Hong Kong to defend her title. She's obviously got the motivation to protect those points. But what are we looking at for a winner here? What's the identikit for finding a potential champion here in Hong Kong?
Yeah, tricky. We've actually got a change of courts here. So last year, it played on the slow side of medium, 65% service holds. Quite a low first serve percentage points won at 61.6, but it was on plexipave, and now the surface is green set, which is like the one used at Cincinnati, which is one of the quicker tournaments on the circuit. So it should play a bit quicker than last year. And temperature-wise, forecast high 20s Celsius during the week, so that's low 80s Fahrenheit. Got a few showers due, but nothing too major. A bit windy early on in the week, but shouldn't be too difficult for the players, the conditions. As you mentioned, Leyla Fernandez, defending champion, she beat Katerina Siniakova in the final last year. Before that, obviously, we had COVID, so it's been quite a while since before last year. No buys in this one because it's a 250. So it's going to be fairly long tournament, this one.
Yeah, let's have a look at the draw, the bracket, the first quarter. Schneider, who's had a really, really good year, the Russian, she's the number one seed. She did well last week, so she's got a bit of motivation. She's the number one seed, and she's scheduled to play Buxa in the quarterfinals. That's the first quarter. In that quarter, you also have Lamens, who won a couple of weeks ago. Leyla Fernandez, as you say, she's in Q2, defending champion. She starts against the Brit Heather Watson. She will play Pera, the American, who's number 9 seed, but obviously now into the main draw, into the seedings. Juan is number 6 in Q3, but it's two major champions here. So 2 major champions in this section, both unseeded. Simona Halep, who Juan plays in round 1, and Kenin. Wang is also in the draw. She's number 4 seed. Gracheva in the Q4, and Katie Bolter, number 2 seed. Was very unlucky last week for our each-way play. Got to the semi-finals, but just couldn't get over the line in that tournament in Tokyo. Looking at the draw, I'm looking at if there's any real advantage or any section of the draw that's weaker than the other section. It looks pretty fair. I mean, Q3 with those 2 former champions, Grand Slam champions, Halep and a returning to form Kenin is an interesting one, but really it looks a little bit fair, this tournament. Let's have a look at the outright market. Schneider is the favourite. She's $3. The Russian number 1 seed. Leyla Fernandez, the defending champion, is plus 550. Katie Bolter, number 2 in the bottom half of the draw. She's 7. Wang 10. Sophie Kenin 12. Lamens, who won, that said a couple of weeks ago, 14. Wang 14. Bogdan 16. Pera 16. Simona Halep 16. Who would have thought a multi-winner Grand Slam champion would be 16-1 in a field like this? 1 at 16, and Kimberly Birov 22-1, 28-1 bar, and we go down to some big prices. But this is a kind of tournament that if they were motivated, the top seeds would be expected to win this. There's no doubt about it. But motivation is a question, and you could get a potentially a shock winner here. For motivation, I think Halep, coming back to this tournament, coming back to mainstream tennis, a point to prove, definitely going to be motivated here. What's your thoughts on this draw, and what are your thoughts of the potential winner here in Hong Kong?
Well, Halep played in the Challenger in Hong Kong last month. That was on Deco turf court, so probably a little slower. She was well beaten by Anna Blinkova, who's returned to form recently, but Blinkova won 6-2, 6-1. So Halep's probably one to avoid at the moment. Isla Tomljanovic won that event, beating Clara Towson in the final. That might actually be as strong a field as this in some ways. I suppose with Q3, you've mentioned the 2 slam winners. Halep was one, and Kenin, can she keep up her form from Tokyo? That's the big question. I mean, if she plays like she did there, she'll win this tournament, but there's got to be some doubt. She's shown very little over the last... I mean, she's shown flashes. I mean, she beat Arena Sabalenka in Rome last year. But apart from that, she's shown very, very little. So that last week was a bit of a shock. Q1, Schneider, hard to see past Schneider in the first quarter. She has had a long, hard season. She reached the semis last week in Tokyo, going out to Qin Wenjung. Lamond, who won last week in Osaka, or 2 weeks ago in Osaka, she's there, as you mentioned. She went out to Marie Bauskova this week in Guangzhou. Fernandez, obviously defending champion, she gave Zheng a bit of a scare in Tokyo, won the second set in their match. Perez in the draw at number 90 because Lulu's son pulled out injured. Anna Bogdan's in the second quarter. She's shown signs of returning to form. But it does look very tricky. In Q4, Bolter looks the one to beat. I mean, you've got fourth seed Jinyu Wang and you've got Jiyu Wang, the unseeded left-hander, both in Q4 just to make things confusing. But it's interesting that the top two in the market are both in the top half, Schneider and Fernandez. And I think, that would be a pick'em clash for me in the semi-finals. Especially Schneider, long, hard season, Fernandez, defending champion. Of course, she does seem to come alive this time of year. I think she won in Mexico a couple of years back as well. And last year she was the star as Canada won the Billie Jean King Cup. She was undefeated all week and she played brilliant tennis. So, Schneider Fernandez in the semi would be a tough one to call. I think Bolter's worth another chance here. She let us down in Tokyo. And she won most of her matches pretty comfortably there. So I don't think fatigue will be an issue. Just unlucky to run into Ken in there, I think. So I'm gonna back Bolter again. She's not at the price. She was $16 last week. She's only $7 this week. So, not as big a price. But in a tricky tournament, I think a point each way at $7 is the play here.
Yep. Katie Bolter. Hopefully go a little bit better than last week. Just fell short to get to the final. 7-1 is the price with Bet Rivers. Head across to the Bet Rivers website now or the app. You'll be able to get the 7-1, which makes her plus 350 to make the final. And that is what we're suggesting, the number 2 seed. She has got a point to prove, though, hasn't she, as well? I mean, she hasn't had a great few months. She want to end the season well. People who want to get into the highest seedings coming in for the Australian Open as well. It's important for people around. Sean Calver's mentioned this to me before. He looks at players at the end of the season who are around that sort of 32, 33, 34 bracket that want to try to get into the seedings for the Australian Open. So there's a lot of people around that bracket who maybe you might look at for motivation, those kind of players, and that might be the case here. And if you look at Katie Bolt, she's actually ranked 33 in the world currently.
Exactly. Yeah,
so a win
here
will get her seeded. Probably seeded for the Australian Open. So when you think that she hasn't really got a point or any incentive to play, that is a huge incentive for her. So, yeah, another little angle there. 33, Katie Bolter. Lena Fernandez is 35 in the world as well. So look at those kind of players there hanging around that mark.
I think Schneider's 30. I know Schneider's up. It's about 16, isn't she now, Schneider? So
Schneider's 16 in the world. Yeah. So I think that's really, really important when you're looking at these players going in for the Australian Open. They need a big week. So that's it. We're going to go for Katie Bolter at 7-1 in Hong Kong each way, a 1 unit each way pick from Rory to start proceedings off. Now, unfortunately, they don't really get much better. That was the highlight of the show now. Let's move on.
That's as good as it gets.
That's as good as that. This is as good as it gets. Now, let's move over to China, to a place called Jiujiang. Am I right?
That's good enough, yeah. That would do.
Jiujiang. Oh, okay. Well, Jiujiang is where we're going. And we're looking at a 250 event here, and this isn't the best of 250s, that's for sure. But I tell you what, it's better than what's coming next. That's better. This show's going downhill very fast. It's going to be a lot worse than that. Rory, what's the conditions like here? What are we going to go over in China? What are we looking at?
Well, the tournament is the Jiangxi Open, which was played in Nanchang last year and years before. So this is the first year it's being held in Jiujiang, so we've not got no form to go on. It's on Deco turf, so shouldn't be too many surprises. I should think it will play sort of medium pace. Pretty much what we see most of the year. Weather-wise, pretty cool, around 20 Celsius. So that's high 60s Fahrenheit. It's not the best. You got Marie Bauskova as the top seed. Rebecca Shramkova's 2, Moyuka Uchijima 3, Jessica Buzas-Monero's 4, Spaniard, Camila Rakimova's 5, Arantxa Rus 6, Lucia Bronzetti 7, Olga Danilovic was 8, but she's pulled out, which has led to some shuffling of the draw. And to tell you how bad things are, and this isn't even the worst tournament, looking at the draw since Danilovic pulled out, Anna Bondar is now popping up twice in the draw. Somehow she's in the third quarter and the fourth quarter in place of Danilovic. So, they can't even
2 runs for your money. She's got to be a bet. She's got 2 chances to get into the first round.
Yeah, she'd probably lose both, to be honest. She's not playing well at all, the Hungarian.
Yeah,
she's a clay court specialist, but she's been dreadful of late. She's not a contender. But, this would probably be... I mean, if you took Bauskova out, this would be a challenger tournament, really. She's the standout. She's been disappointing of late, though. She's had chances in recent weeks where she's been one of the high seeds and just hasn't got it done. And I think she's a player to take on, but it's wide open. You know, she's top of the betting, and I think it's $9 bar her. So it's a very wide open tournament.
Yep. She is actually 47 in the world. She's number 1 seed here this week. But as I say, it gets worse. Let's have a look at the draw. Bauskova, top seed, as Rory said. She's in the top quarter. Makrimova is in that bracket as well. Manero, is that right? Number 4 seed. Manero. Yeah. She's up against Rus in Q2, Bronzetti in Q3, alongside Uchiyama. I watched that Uchiyama play that young British girl the other day. I mean, what a talent that is. Have you seen that young British girl? She's only 14.
I didn't see her.
She's from Polish descent. She
is this the one who got to the tie break?
She was 4-1 up or 5-1 up. I'll tell you what, she's going to be some player. I can't even remember her name now, but I'll come find it in a minute. Bondar is now into that Q4, we believe, and she's against Shramkova. So that's the order of play. I mean, really, it's anyone's sort of market. Let's have a look at the betting on it and see if you can pick the bones out of this. Buzkova is plus 450. Rakimova is 11. Buzas-Monero 12. Bronzetti 12. Shramkova 12. Zhang 12. Stardubetsa 12. Rus 16. Zygmunt 16. Golubic 16. Bondar 18. Fett 20. Martic 20, and I'm going to say 25 to 1 bar because I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the next one. It's 25 to 1 bar, those players. The one thing I would say here, Rory, I looked at this. 4 of the last 7 years of this tournament has been won by a Chinese player. There's a lot of Chinese players in this draw, not the best of the Chinese players, but they are going to be incentivized to do well here. I was thinking about just throwing a little bit of pizza money on the majority of the Chinese players and see which one goes deep, because these kind of tournaments they always they play well, don't they? And anyone can win it. And I think we'll go some real big prices, some Chinese players.
Yeah, well, the qualifiers was just almost all Chinese players in the qualifiers, just because there's 3 of these tournaments this week. I mean, the best hope is probably Shui Zhang, who obviously had that horrible losing streak and then picked up a bit, had a good run in. Where was it, Beijing, but has dropped off a bit since then. As far as dangerous non-seeds, I mean, in Q2, you've got Victoria Golubic, who's not bad on her day. Yulia Starobdubtseva reached the quarterfinals in Beijing as a quarter qualifier. I think she won the first set against Coco Gauff, if memory serves, but she's been in terrible form since. Q3 looks really weak. Bronzetti made the semis in Guangzhou and then fell to Caroline Dolehide in a 3rd set tiebreak. She had 4 match points in that tiebreak, and in fairness, the Americans saved them really well. Laura Siegemund's in Q3, so she could be one to watch. Q4, well, Shramkova let me down in Guangzhou last week, and no reason to think this week will be any better. I mean, she's up against Shui Zhang first up, and she will have plenty of home support, the Chinese. Martina Trevisan's in that quarter, but, she's lost her last 5 matches in a row, so she's in no sort of form. The top half, Bauskova's the obvious one. I'm just a bit wary because, she's been in this situation in recent weeks where she's been, a high seed and she hasn't delivered. Rakimova's one of the dangers in that top half, the 5th seed. and they're actually the top two in the betting, Bauskova and Rakimova. So I think the bottom half, because it looks really weak as well, I think is the one to focus on. I think Bronzetti's shown enough in recent weeks to suggest she'll be competitive. She reached the semis in Guangzhou. In the first round, she's up against the player who you didn't try to pronounce, the player from Thailand called Mananchaya Sawankiao.
Yep.
Who's not done badly recently. She gave Arina Sabalenka a bit of a test in Beijing, but that was...
Please don't tip her, Rory, because it means I've got to tweet her.
No,
I've got to tweet. I've got to tweet her. If she wins, I've got to tweet. That'll be a disaster. Please don't go. Jana Fett has got a great chance. Petra Martic has got a great chance, and Arantxa Giroux. They're lovely picks. Don't be going for that one. I've got to tweet that, please. No, come on, leave it. It can't be a nightmare. No, please don't. Please don't.
Well, I think Bronzetti will beat the Thai in the first round. It won't be a cakewalk. But if she gets through that, then she'll face Jana Fett or Sasai Zheng, who's in awful form. And then it's probably Siegemund or Uchijima in the quarterfinals. I mean, the bottom quarter, it's that's a pin job. I mean, it could be anyone. I think Bronzetti has got a good chance of getting through that bottom half. So she's my pick. $12 a point each way on Lucia Bronzetti.
Lucia Bronzetti, 12-1 with Bet Rivers. The tournament in China starts tomorrow, nice and early. Make sure you get these bets on nice and early because the action does get underway very, very early tomorrow morning, and you don't want to miss out on these matches. Now, we're leaving the best till last. Now we're leaving to the best till last. This is the tournament. We're just gonna check what time the action does start. Well, I think it's very early tomorrow morning, so you haven't got much we haven't got the order of play yet through, but I think it's very, very early tomorrow morning. So make sure you head across there and get these bets down if you want to be involved in these tournaments in here. Make sure you get 2 a.m. Hong Kong, 2 a.m. in Hong Kong, and in China we're at midnight tonight. So it's a very, very early start. You haven't got much time at all. That's what time the tournaments start, with the time difference between the United States and over in the Far East. Let's go to Merida Open, which is a tournament in Mexico. Now, Rory, tell me all about this one, because I don't know anything about this tournament. I know the past winners, and there's only been one. It was Camila Giorgi won it in 2023. Always one of my favourites, Camila Giorgi. Hasn't been around a lot this year, which is very disappointing for me. What about yourself here? I mean, what are the conditions going to be like here in Mexico?
Yeah, I think that was Georgie's last tournament win before retiring, I think. She was unseeded and beat Rebecca Peterson of Sweden in the final. That says all you need to know. I mean, this is a 250 in name only. This could be a W100 event. Mexico's Renata Zarazua is the top seed. She's ranked 71 in the world. It's on a surface which I'm not all that familiar with. It's called Solflex. It's hard court, but it's not especially quick. 64% service holds last year. It's slow medium. I don't think it's going to be presenting too many surprises. Weather-wise, hot and wet is the forecast. Low 30s Celsius all week, so that's high 80s Fahrenheit. But we've got rain forecast in the afternoon from Monday to Thursday, so there could be a bit of a fixture pile-up. This is not a good tournament. Really isn't. We do have a few clues because away from the main tour, we've had some challenger events and some W100s. Some in Asia. We had the Hong Kong Challenger, which I mentioned earlier, but we also had the W100 in Macon, Georgia, and then last week we had a challenger in Tampico, which is also in Mexico. It's not a great tournament by any stretch. I mean, the seeds. I mean,
I suppose. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I mean, sometimes when you have these tournaments and it's very, very competitive, it's 9-1 the field. They sometimes throw up some of the best value, though. You might not be. It's not. We look at these. Some of these aren't even household names in their own household, but it's a tournament that you can perhaps find a nice price about someone who can go deep in the tournament because it's so open. And if you can just spot the nice bracket, or you can spot someone at a big price, it doesn't matter what the tournament. If you're betting a winner at 15-1 or 16-1, it doesn't matter. If Wimbledon or the Merida Open, they pay the same. And this is the kind of tournament you might get lucky here.
Yeah. it's funny because we only got the odds very shortly before we started recording this, and I'd sort of written down my thoughts, and then I looked at the odds and I kind of changed them quite a lot because there were a couple of players who I'd considered but didn't think they would be such big prices, and there were a couple of players who I liked who were shorter prices than I wanted, because as you say, it's 9-1 the field. I mean, this is like the Grand National in the old days. It's not a tournament for big stakes, but definitely there are some players who you just wouldn't think have a chance in this at all. There are other players who come into it in a bit of form, and even if they're not winning tournaments, they've kind of gone far enough to suggest. So, for instance, Marina Stakusic, the Canadian, she's in the bottom half of the draw. She won this challenger in Tampico last night. And, she's just won a tournament. So she's coming straight into another one. Makes me think, maybe one to avoid perhaps. Whereas who she beat in the semi-finals, who did she beat in the semi-finals? I lost my notes here. I think it's Anne Lee. She beat Anne Lee the week before. Well, Anne Lee got deep the week before in another W100. In Macon. She got to the final. And she's not a bad price. So it's just trying to sort of, it's a bit of a puzzle. The favourite is Anna Blinkova, who had a horrendous middle of the season, losing, I think she lost 11 matches in a row. But she's been back on form in recent weeks. So, she is probably the right favourite. She has played a lot, though, because she reached the final in Tampico last night. She lost to Stakusic. Getting my words muddled up, my notes muddled up. She won the W100 the week before in Macon. So she's had a couple of long tournaments. So it makes me think, okay, she's a favourite because she's on form, but also she's played a lot of tennis in the last couple of weeks. So, is she she's not a safe favourite at 9-1, but is she worth a bet?
Home advantage. Zhaozu's got home advantage here as well.
She is. I've seen a bit. I've seen a bit of her in the past. I'm not quite sure how she's got to 71 in the world, to be honest. Right. She's not bad. I mean, when I've seen her, she's been okay on clay, but she's not going to pull up any trees. I mean, this isn't a tournament with anyone. I mean, you've got some players capable. You've got, Nadia Podoroska reached the semis at Roland Garros a few years back, but she's a clay court specialist. Ayla Tomljanovic, she's number 3 seed, really patchy of late. I don't think these conditions will suit her because I think it's going to be too slow. Jule Niemeyer's number 4 seed, the German. She's only played once since the US Open. She lost that match to Varvara Lepchenko, who's almost as old as you, Nigel. So there are holes to pick in a lot of these players. Number 6 seed is Maria Carla, the Argentinian, who's great defensively. Better on clay, really good clay court player. Probably not great here. Tatiana Maria, a former Wimbledon semi-finalist. She's a 7th seed, but not in particularly good form. And number 8 is Nuria Parizas-Diaz, Spaniard, who actually did win a W100 in Carey on hard courts, beating Zarazua in the final. I mean, that was a W100. Zarazua was seeded 2nd there, and she's the top seed here in a 250. So it's one thing to say about Tomljanovic, she did win the challenger in Hong Kong, but that was in quicker conditions. And she didn't make it past the first round of the main draw in either Wuhan or Ningbo. She's in the 3rd quarter. It's a really tricky tournament.
Let's have a look at the jury before we come on to the bet. Zarazu's the number 1 seed. She's in the top bracket along with Carly, she's saying, in Q1. Niemeyer in Q2 alongside Blinkova, starts off with a tough match against Serenko. So Serenko and Parks is in there as well. And also Sorribes Tormo. So Q2 is quite a tough draw. Parizas-Diaz is in Q3, the number 8 seed. She's in there with Tomljanovic, the number 3 seed. And Tatiana Maria, the number 7 seed, is in there with Podoroska, and that makes up the draw. So you can see it's not the highest of quality, but it is interesting from a betting perspective. Blinkova's 9-1, Sorribes Tormo is 9-1, Tomljanovic 10, Zarazua is 11, Korneva is 14. Stakusik is 14. Kudermetova, Polina Kudermetova is 14. Anne Lee is 16. Maya Joint looks high at 16. Nadia Podoroska is 16. And Robin Montgomery is also 16. Tatiana Maria is also 16 as well. What do you think of this one? It's still here.
It took me a second to get that, Nigel. Very good. Very good. She's actually quite promising, Maya Joint, the Australian. And she's got an interesting first round. She's up against Stakusic in the first round, which might be a test for the Canadian. Yeah, it's tough. In that top half, I mean, the top quarter, you could pick anyone from that. The second quarter is the most difficult, but one of my picks comes from it, just because she's a bigger price than I think she should be, and that's Lucrezia Stefanini. She's up against Niemeyer first round, and I think she'll beat Niemeyer just because Niemeyer's not fit, I don't think. She just hasn't played much recently. And then she's likely to face Sara Sorribes Tormo, the Spaniard, who's great on slow surfaces. Whether this will be slow enough for her, I'm not sure. And then you've got possibly Blinkova or Serenko, or Alicia Parks is just really inconsistent, serving incredible amounts of double faults at the moment. I mean, I think I saw her in Madrid last year, and she hasn't kicked on at all, and she's just been very disappointing. But Stefanini is $28, and I thought, just because, there's a lot of players around the 12, 14, 16 mark, Stefanini, she's had some good wins in recent weeks. She lost in 3 sets to Stakusic in the quarterfinals in Tampico this week, just gone. She actually won a first set 6-love, and then managed to lose. But I just think, this is such a weak field. I mean, Blinkova's the obvious one in that quarter, but she's not the most consistent. Serenko, if she's fit, I mean, she probably has more injury retirements than anyone on the circuit. If Serenko's fit, she'll give her a game. Going to the bottom half, I like the look of Anne Lee just because she's been knocking on the door in recent weeks. In that W100, she got to the final in Macon. And then in Tampico, she actually lost in the first round to Stefanini. So there's a kind of form line there I'm kind of looking at. And Lee is $16. I would have liked a bit of a bigger price. If she can get past Parisas Diaz in round 1, and she's beaten her in her 2 previous meetings, she shouldn't have it too hard through possibly to the final. I mean, you could see her getting to the final. Just takes, someone to find a bit of form. And you'll go deep in this tournament because it's such a weak event. But I'm only going to be betting half a point each way on both of these. But Stefanini from the top half at $28 and Anne Lee in the bottom half at $16. It's funny because obviously this is the one where, you don't have to hurry to get your bets on, but it's whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one. And, some of the tennis is not going to be of the highest quality. But as you say, a winner is a winner. Doesn't matter where it is.
Exactly. And these tournaments do have a habit of throwing up some of the best value. I always think sometimes, when you've got like a very, very heavy favourite like a Świątek, or on the men's tour, you got a Yannick Sinner and big favourites, you've got to look for opposition. This one here is 9-1 favourite, so it's very, very wide open. BetRivers will have all the outright markets available on the app, on the website, head across there. And that's it really for the week. I mean, we're going to be back next week. I think the tournament starts on Saturday, isn't it? The WTA Championship. It's not on the Sunday start, so we might have to be back a little bit early. We might have to come back on Friday to preview the WTA Championships. But after a very long year, where we started in January doing these shows on the WTA Tour, many ups and downs, we've come to it. Plus 0.09.
Are we? Oh,
We're
wow.
plus 0.09. After all those bets are actually virtually level. Incredible scenes that after all those bets we are level here. But I mean, really, we'd have hoped for a couple of better tournaments to end the season on. But we've got a lot of picks there. Just go through the picks, Rory. So if anyone hasn't made a note of them, what are our picks on the penultimate week of the season?
I'm struggling to remember them myself. No, Katie Bolter is one, definitely. In
I
Hong
do
Kong.
like that. I'm going to bet Katie Bolter, and I'm going to bet Fernandez as well, just because of that fact of trying to get that 32, getting the top 32 for the Australian Open. I think they'll both be up for the challenge, those two.
Yeah, I said just the thing putting me off Fernandez is that potential meeting with Schneider, because to me that's a pick and match, and I'd rather go for one in the bottom half, which is Katie Bolter. Yep. So I've backed her a point each way at $7. Then in Jiujiang, the one in China, very weak 250. I'm going for a point each way on Lucia Bronzetti at $12. And then in Merida in Mexico, just half point each way bets these. Lucrezia Stefanini, $28, and Anne Lee at $16.
Yep, there it is. There are our final picks on the outright markets. If you learned the following the show, we're slightly up. We're just behind, 2 units behind on the ATP Tour show, and the football boys are still smashing it despite a bad weekend on the Premier League. And the European show, I think they're about 20-odd units up. So it's been a great few weeks. If you've been following all the picks here, and if you haven't been following the picks, where have you been? Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Betting Weekly Studios. Download this podcast, Betting Weekly WTA, and all our other podcasts as well in your preferred podcast provider. And and follow our socials on Instagram and on Twitter at Because We Win. Rory, thank you very much for your time. Good luck with all your bets this week. I know it's been a bit of a trial today because we were waiting a long time for the odds, and really... it's not the best of the tournaments to end the season on. But next week, we've got the top 8 players in the world going head-to-head over in the big money event in Saudi. And I'm sure we'll have some big bets on there. We'll discuss that, discuss the groups, discuss the outright, and talk some matches as well. So all that to look forward to. And we'll probably be up on Friday previewing those. Rory, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll speak to you on Friday. Take care.
Cheers, Nigel.